okay? But at least it makes sense. We're bigger than the Kenyan economy, at least on an aggregate GDP basis. And we're bigger than almost everybody else except two others GDPs in sub-Saharan Africa. Only Nigeria and South Africa have a bigger GDP than us, occasionally Angola, but it's an exceptional case. So I think it's about time. We have the size. But most importantly, and I'll show you in a second, we have the kinds of companies that are actually ready to be listed on the stock exchange. So here comes my main talk. I will be very, very quick. The types of institutions, the types of things that we need to have for this thing to be successful. And the first one is we need to set up a regulatory institution. It depends on how we want to set it up. It could be set up as an independent body. In the United States, it's called the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. The UK has its own version. In some countries, the central bank has a division. Maybe we can have the NB add a division, but we do need regulation. Regulation is by government. Even in the US government regulates it. This is not a self-regulated market. So let's be very clear. So it means we need to build up the capacity of whatever government institutions to be set up to be able to regulate this market, okay? So what does it do? It issues and regulates the rules for the operations of the stock market in a simple form. That's what the regulatory body, what we call the SEC, but whatever name we give it in Ethiopia, that is key. That's very, very important. And number two is brokerage firms. Today, you don't need a license to trade under the table, right? You and your mom and your dog can trade as you wish, right? I mean, no, that's not going to happen when you have a regulated stock market. These people have to be trained. It has to be established. Now, we can also debate here, are these brokerage firms who buy and sell stocks on behalf of clients, are they going to be part of the banks? Okay, this is something we also need to, but at least we do know we need stock brokerage firms. I also refer to the US because that's the country I know the most. In the US, until a few years ago, it was prohibited for commercial banks to own stock brokerage firms and investment banks. They have what they call the Glass-Steagall Act that was enacted in the 1930s that separated commercial banking from investment banking and brokerage. But under the Clinton administration, they allowed it. I think part of the reason for the 2008 financial crisis actually is the conflicted interest of commercial banks who also have a brokerage firm, who also have an investment bank. So again, in Ethiopia, we need to debate as to whether or not we want the banks, the private banks and the state-owned bank to own a brokerage firm. But the key point is we do need brokerage firms, stock brokerage firms. We also need, of course, investment banks. Again, here we can debate if we should have these things owned by the banks or not. Investment banks bring the IPOs, the underwritings to the market, all right? Now, besides that, we could have trade clearinghouse. I'll skip that because it's a bit technical. But here's the key point. Whoever is going to be doing trading in stocks in the future is going to be a professional. He will be certified. Like I am a CPA as an accountant. In the US and other countries, you need to have a certification to trade stocks. Okay, your mom or your cousin or you can't be trading stocks as they wish because this is a regulated, transparent market. So training them. Accounting firms. For 18 years, I run one of the world's largest accounting and consulting firms called Ernst & Young. Firms like us and others, and in this country, of course, the big firms are not allowed to operate, but the local capacity has to be built up for local accounting firms to do this work, all right? Because transparent financial reporting is key for shareholders to have confidence in the market. Now, this may come as not a surprise to many of you, but the financial media either has to be established or what exists today needs to expand its financial news coverage. It's to disseminate important information about the markets. Today, if you see on ETV or some of the other channels, they usually have the ECX traded Sidama coffee at X. No, we need to go beyond that and educate the public in a very sophisticated way. And also do investigative reporting about companies, you know, when they claim earnings of X and Y and Z. The financial media, as they do in the rest of the world, play a very important role. So the financial media is a key component. And again, those of you who've traded stocks or have seen how it operates in other countries, you notice that it's the backbone for this whole entire operation is a very strong telecom infrastructure and technology support. These trades go in seconds. A second you miss could be the decision between loss and profit on your stock. So we also need to set up very sophisticated technologies. So in summary, and I don't want to go into a lot of other things, but as I said, it's just food for thought. We're going to have a stock market. That's a done deal. All of us here are stakeholders then to say, what are the institutions, what we need to do to establish, and I think I've given some of them here. There are many others. But the bottom line is we do need the capital markets. And one other thing I said last year, and I'll repeat it again, there are, in my estimate, between 50 and 70 companies today who can easily do an IPO the day the Addis Ababa Stock Exchange is ready for launch, especially the banks. Every single private banks, of course we can talk about should they merge or not, that's another issue, but all the banks in Ethiopia, I think despite what we talked about NBE having some issues here, as well regulated. I think investors have confidence. Those are the types of institutions I think would be the first to be listed. But here's the kicker. One of the very good things that happened this year, a major economic policy decision made by the Ethiopian government, which will help the stock market, is privatization. A lot of these big state-owned companies, whether it's Ethiopian Airlines, shipping lines, or others, are going to be offloaded by the government. In what form will be decided. But as I've said in the past, some of these companies should be should do an IPO on the Addis Ababa Stock Exchange. Okay? For some, it might be too late. I think the telco and others might be sold a year from now. But at least there are a lot of state-owned enterprises which could be sold through the IPO on the stock exchange. So the bottom line is we're ready. It's timely. And we're very happy that the government decided that Ethiopia will have a stock exchange. It's us as stakeholders then to make sure it's successful by establishing these kinds of successful institutions. Thank you very much for having me.